ready for some Bengals news? At the Growler, we got you. Hot takes, interviews from your host, Paul Danglo Jr.
All right, welcome into this week's Rewatch reaction with our good friend Charlie Goldsmith. We're doing it week 2, back for a second episode after so many rave reviews. It was such a popular segment. This is the greatest thing that's happened to the Growler in months. That's what they're saying out there on the streets, out on these streets.
All the people, all the free graders, people feel snubbed right now. You've had like Dan Pitcher on, he feels snubbed. Yep. Jay, of course, and Mo and all those guys. So I'm thank you for snubbing some people who I like.
Everybody needs to be snubbed right now for what we've got from you. So we've for those that didn't see week 1 or didn't listen to week 1, Charlie and I, whenever we would show up to the facility on Mondays, would sit down, and one of the first things we'd say is, thanks to the glory of NFL Pro, which you can go and filter out whatever game situation you want from that week's game. Where'd you start? And we would talk about whatever the plays are that we saw that stood out to us. So I will offer you to this again. Where'd you start, Charlie?
Well, we talked about a lot about Lou Anarumo on last week's show. Cooper Rush played poorly, and I think the biggest reason that Dallas's offense has struggled was he just missed some plays. But I also think there were some real moments where you saw Lou Anarumo having some proof of concept from a scheme perspective, from a creativity perspective, and then from a rules and execution standpoint. And I think you saw that specifically on a bunch of the stops that the Bengals got. So I went through, how did they get these stops? I saw Cam Taylor-Britt executing a coaching point as a press man corner that they've been working on him with, the details of in that style of coverage since the Baltimore game. That led to the pick that got tipped to Geno Stone. I was a big fan of a 3rd and 5 in the second quarter where there was a pre-snap motion that stacked Cam Taylor-Britt and Marco Wilson, who got here like 3 weeks ago. And we've seen guys who have been here for 3 years messing up that motion, but Cam Taylor-Britt and Marco Wilson executed it perfectly. And I believe Wilson took away CeeDee Lamb. So great job by someone whose role really seemed to expand. The cover 0 blitz, like, it's one thing to call a all-out blitz in a massive moment. The Week 17 against the Chiefs 2021 takes a lot of guts. Takes even more guts when you feel like you're the worst cover 0 blitz team in the league, and you've already seen Mike Hilton get burned on a touchdown and all the Pittsburgh stuff last week with the blitzes. Geno Stone did it perfect. And then lastly, a play that I could talk for an hour about. How on the whiteboard do Trey Hendrickson and Joseph Ossai end up at middle linebacker as blitzers with Muma and ADG as your edge guys? And then it all inverts in a crazy, play design that really did feel like vintage 2022 Lou Anarumo, something you've never seen before. So again, like, Lou's taking a lot of heat. Also got to give him some credit for some really nice stuff that we saw yesterday.
All right. Well, if you can do an hour on it, give me more. Give me more on the newest package that's going to occur. This is Lou Anarumo's future. This is it. This is going to be where we're going to point back to this and say this was what turned everything around, was moving Joseph Ossai and Trey Hendrickson to the linebacker position. What happened? I'm trying to place it myself.
So this was they had the final drive in the final minute, but this was the drive before then. The drive, it was 20-20, 3rd and 10. They put Trey Hendrickson basically where Jermaine Pratt would stand. They put Joseph Ossai at a Logan Wilson middle linebacker spot. I'm sorry, I was wrong. They actually had Muma in kind of a 4-3 look. Quick tangent. I bet Muma was only in the game there because Joe Bacci was out with a groin injury. So yeah. Muma, who knows how many reps he got with this scheme in practice? Because if you're planning on using this for one play, I bet that they repped it a few times, mostly with Joe Bacci. And then it's actually Pratt and ADG on the edge, BJ Hill in the middle, and then some defensive backs on the back end. Basically, all that matters is it ends up being Ossai creates like a stunt, sets a pick on the left tackle, and then Hendrickson goes all the way around and gets a free lane to the quarterback, like we've seen Logan Wilson do a lot. But when that's your best pass rusher, one of the best pass rushers in football, getting a free path around the left tackle to hit the quarterback and force a bad throw on what at the time was the biggest defensive play of the game. Then real quick behind that, you actually had Pratt dropping out in kind of a hook zone. You had the corners bailing and establishing a cover 3 with the outside corners and with Geno Stone over the top, and then Von Bell kind of in a intermediate zone over the middle. But the whole design was a way to create a pass rush game that broke Trey free. Quarterback hit on 3rd and 10. Cowboys punt the ball. Bengals punt the ball, but then they get the ball back, and then the Bengals win.
Yeah, that is though a Lou Anarumo hallmark, is to have people you don't expect come from a certain place, come out of nowhere and make a big play, specifically on those 3rd downs in those big moments. And really right now it's how can you make Trey Hendrickson feel like a surprise? That's just so hard to do because teams are so trained to just focus on him now. Well, you can just have him stand at middle linebacker apparently, and it worked. So kudos to them on that. Here's where I started. I started with Chase Brown receptions and targets. I included the targets too, but I had some big notes on Chase Brown in the receiving game. I mean, I don't know if people understand this, but Chase Brown has been a top 3 offensive player in this league for the last 5 weeks. I mean, it's unbelievable. He has 617 scrimmage yards over the last 5 games. Saquon leads the league at 819. Jamar Chase is second at 659, and Chase Brown is third at 617. He's got 4 touchdowns. I mean, and he's catching the ball. He's got 3 straight over 50 yards, 3 straight over 10 yards per reception. And what you saw in this game, they're using him in different ways. It's not all check downs. It's not all just a leak out of the backfield. They had multiple plays just running him like an outside receiver, running slant, running a 9-ball against Deron Bland. Yeah. I mean, that was a design Chase Brown 9-ball from the high red. And so that is so much faith they are showing right now in what Chase Brown is specifically as a receiver. It was mind-blowing. I want to go through a couple of them here with you, Charlie. And I don't know if you remember these specifically or saw these, but this is a very early play in the game. It was a play where Burrow climbs the pocket. Chase had just gone out and turned around like standard check down straight ahead. And Burrow ends it somehow sneaking it out and getting it to Chase while he gets kind of sandwiched, right? What happens is where I think Chase Brown has really developed this connection with Burrow, and you're seeing this a lot on his scrambles that end up in Chase Brown's hands. He's doing a great job of mirroring Burrow's pocket movement. So he stands, he's staring right at him. Burrow flushes, and Chase anticipates the flush to the right, and he starts running with him, and that quick burst leaves Overshawn behind, and Chase Brown catches it, and he's able to wiggle up, and he ends up with 13 yards. I mean, a 13-yard gain just off of mirroring Burrow's downhill pocket movement. I mean, that is so important for a player that's going to become a weapon for you in the check down game to develop that chemistry. You're really seeing that, and that certainly stood out to me there.
A lot of these scramble drills as well, like the Chargers game stands out, that what I call kind of a jump pass on that first drive you were talking about. He's not just releasing, he's getting upfield. He's thinking like a receiver and, identifying opportunities to create those extra 10 yards after the catch. And I mean, the idea with him has always been, with the explosiveness, tremendous yards after catch or yards after contact ability with him. He understands what he has to do as a route runner to make that happen. Quick, praise as well to Andre Oshivash for getting 2 different blocks in on that touchdown.
Yeah.
Yoshi's, he's not Tyler Boyd wide receiver 3, but he's pretty much established himself as dirty work. He had a nice scramble drill read moment, blocking, the versatility with what he can do, basically lining up anywhere on the field and running any route in kind of a complementary role. It hasn't been, this vertical route tree that maybe we expected, but he too has been another example of a young guy that the coaching staff saw something in that they developed into maybe a skill set you weren't expecting, and now they're contributing in big ways.
There's no doubt. I mean, a guy that I liken him to, he's, I talked to Dan Pitcher last week and we were talking about Yoshi, and he was talking about how they've really specifically been challenging him to be more physical in the run game as a blocker. I mean, his big body as a receiver lends himself to this, and they need that from him. They need him to be sort of like Gesicki, but a better blocker. And that can be a part of his game. I think Jawan Jennings in San Francisco, a guy who does all the dirty work, but makes some big catches and can make some big plays, and into a guy that it was kind of the role that maybe they're looking for out of that number 3 receiver. And you're seeing that on some plays in recent weeks where a long run by Chase Brown against Pittsburgh, it was Yoshi a big part of sealing that run off. And then, yeah, you mentioned the touchdown by Brown here. That was the amazing burst from Chase Brown. But it's there. He's able to burst because Yoshi gets a big piece of the block to the sideline, and Drew Sample gets a piece of a couple guys over there too, because of course he does, because it's just Drew Sample.
What he was put on this earth to do, Dan Pitcher says.
No question. And so you can see it. And that's a combination, but really it's their willingness to go to Chase Brown and viewing this as weapon number 2 right now in this offense. I mean, the numbers speak what the numbers speak. They are designing plays for big spots for him. The 4th and 3 is strictly a design that they had later in the game. It was strictly a design to chase Brown out of the backfield to get him on Overshawn one-on-one. It didn't work out. He gets hit. Yes. And they don't convert it. But that was like, let's go get Chase Brown one-on-one on 4th and 3. I mean, think about that, where they're at with him, that they have that much confidence. Let's run him deep against Deron Bland. Let's do all of these things. He's earning so much trust, and you're hearing it in everybody's voice. You heard it from Burrow after the game. He is really becoming a dude, and specifically with how he's continuing to develop this season as a receiver. We saw him sort of physically and in the fundamentals develop that way in his work with the receiver coach this offseason. But I think now you're seeing him develop in his feel and awareness and ability to kind of have developed chemistry with Burrow right now. We know how far away that can go, and man, they can build the offense around that.
And then back to him getting upfield, and how hard that is. Like we talked about Yoshi, the fumble was the perfect example. The 4th and 1 against the Patriots was the perfect example of Yoshi Vash not good at getting upfield in those moments as he makes the catch and turns. The fumble I'm referring to is it got overturned, but on the field it was a fumble that looked like it would be one of the biggest plays of last night's game. Yoshi isn't good at that right now. Brown is terrific at that, at identifying and getting the ball at the right point in a way that sets himself up to keep going down the field. And Jamar's the best at that. And then that's how they won the game at the end. But to have more guys like that, it's funny too. Like I read this quote. Mike Tomlin has one of the coaches specifically in charge of the yak element of the Steelers offense. And this is probably some of the best yak offense the Bengals have had. And you're seeing it with the designs of the plays too. Players who know exactly what they need to do to get the optimal yards after the catch opportunities.
Yeah, it's been impressive work from Chase Brown, who is making a name for himself and certainly going to be a central figure in their plan going forward. Could he be, dare I say, a cornerstone?
Oh, wow.
Wow, right? At least for one more year. Running backs, then they'll trade him in for the next model. But, that for right now, he's certainly – I said before the season, and I feel like it's sort of coming to fruition, and I'm not saying this to pat myself in the back, but I think you can see how it played out that way. The Kyron Williams correlation, a late round pick who started to show some things, and then you had last season, and the next thing you know, the Rams are building their offense around him in so many ways, at least certainly their running game and extensions of it. You're seeing the Bengals doing the same thing with Chase Brown, with how he's excelled, not certainly almost solely because of what he's doing as a receiver and the ability to get him the ball out in space. All right, did you have anything else that you specifically went to that you want to touch on before we wrap this?
Well, Jamar's 14 catches. I'll just start there. What were your thoughts on Jamar's 14 catches?
That is just the latest example of why he is the best receiver in football and why you can focus everything around him. Teams, you can't say we're gonna stop Jamar because you just don't know where he's gonna be on any play. And you're gonna cloud him, you're not gonna let him go over the top, you're not gonna let him try to run the middle. Like you've seen him make. Guess what? He catches a million balls running out to the sidelines last night. I mean, and just snags the balls perfectly, gets the toe drag swag, gets the separation. Burrow's got the perfect chemistry. It's just, there's nothing you can do. It's pick your poison. How do you want Jamar to beat you tonight? And I kept thinking, man, I had written something before the game-winning touchdown was, he got a ton of balls and he had a big night, but the one thing he didn't have was the big play, like the big play. And then next thing you know, he makes one guy miss and off he goes. And it's just so hard for any defense, even if you're Mike Zimmer trying all night to make sure Jamar Chase doesn't hit the big play on you, to keep him from doing it. Eventually he's gonna get you. There's too many ways he can access it.
Two things on Jamar. First was that I've never seen a defense that looked that scared of just a pure deep ball. You see often teams like cloud and kind of they take away more of the intermediate short range, and then Jamar will beat you deep. But the safety wasn't even in the play up top. The safety was at the very top of the screen. Just don't allow the deep ball was one of the 11 guys were doing. Not just that, don't allow the deep ball to Jamar was one of the 11 guys' responsibilities. And that's how Jamar keeps getting it. Wait, you're going to let me run 10 yards because you're not pressing me either? And I'm just going to keep cutting to the sideline? Okay. If it reminded me too of like defenses playing like a deep zone when they know a run is coming on 3rd and 20, let's say, and we'll let you get the 10-yard run. Except with this, it was just 15-yard pass after 15-yard pass that the Cowboys seemed to be willing to live with because they were that terrified of the alternative. And to me, that's what makes Jamar special is the fear he puts in you on every play that he'll burn you deep. And then the other thing was just how they dress stuff up. I would bet that this was a record for Jamar catches out of play action, continuing to use motion, starting the game with Jamar as a wing back. One of my favorite plays of the game was a motion stacks into the slot with P that then opens up a lane for Jamar to run a bench route. Like a lot more creative ways where, your story on Jamar, the line that stuck with me the most was the more we do, pitcher said, the more rules the defense has to have. And I'm thinking of some crossing routes over the middle too, some short ones. You could see the Cowboys just being slow because they were confused because they had so much to process. And then Jamar was just playing at his own speed and doing his thing.
Loved that the crosser that they ran motion for him underneath and then used that to kind of just get him that extra gear to go across the line in front of the face of the linebackers, and he just runs away from them. They're confused and they're a step slow because he's already got a head of steam, and he takes it and he gets around the corner and now off he goes. It's just they have become masters of finding creative ways to involve Jamar at this point, and that's apparent. And so I kept thinking of the word force feeding last night because there was some of that, and so the interception's probably one of those where it was just locking on. But there really isn't force feeding because they're so creative in getting him open, and you're just going at one-on-ones or you're going at the opening on the field that they're leaving for him because you can't protect every blade of grass with double teams. Like if you don't know where he's going to be, it's so hard to pinpoint him. And so it's not a force feed. That's just the Jamar offense that they're able to run so effectively right now.
I mean, this isn't groundbreaking rocket science, but, we talk about all the deep outs. What do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 deep out. You could call them different things, but 6 basically deep outs. And then I have setup plays, basically, 1, 2, 3 as well, where, he fakes that out and then it turns into a dig or it turns into a slant or it turns into a cross over the middle. And of course, that's basic football, but just another reminder of, all right, you're getting tired of getting beat this way. There are 100 other ways to do it. And, there used to be like 50 other ways to do it. And the Bengals have found 50 more ways to get Jamar the ball this year.
Can I go next gen stats on you? Do you want some, the next gen stats, the Zebra Technologies, email that we get with all the stats every week? Jamar Chase hauled in 9 of 11 targets on outbreaking routes for 122 yards in his 2 touchdowns, the most receiving yards on outbreakers over the last 7 seasons. 7 seasons.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That's how effective he was, but because that's what Zimmer decided to give him, and they took it, and they took it, and they took it, and they took it. And then when you have a receiver of that ability and a quarterback of that ability, that's what it looks like. 1 week it's flying over the middle, 1 week it's over the top, the next week it's 7 years worth of outbreakers that you just get beat on, and eventually the last one for the game-winning touchdown. But all right, did you have any other random thought that you want to sneak out before we wrap this?
I got 2 more random plays I'd like to discuss.
Okay, let's go.
The first is a reference to a television show that you didn't watch, but was from my generation. If I had a nickel for every time a Bengals right tackle allowed Micah Parsons to run right past him without getting a hand on him, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it is weird that it's happened twice. The other being Lyle Collins in 2022, where then Frank threw him under the bus for not being ready in training camp. Other favorite play of the game, and then it happened last night. I don't know how Burrow got that ball off to Gesicki. That might have been my favorite Burrow play of the game.
Yeah.
The fact that he got that throw off. My other favorite play of the game, I believe this was early fourth quarter. They ran what I believe to be the same angle route to Tanner Hudson that they ran in the red zone versus the Patriots. And dude, watch this play. Tanner Hudson is holding onto this football like it is his child. And he is running through a minefield with his child. Yeah. And Hudson was not giving up that ball. And he didn't. And he got the first down.
And just like it was then, it was wide open. Yeah. And it went for a big game. No, you're exactly right. He hears that play, and the first thing he's doing is having flashback to the play that I affectionately call wee. He went to throw his hands up in the air in celebration a little early against New England. But yeah, great eye on that one. Great observation. That was a perfect moment. That might have to ask Tanner about that this week. Going back to that, maybe we can finally make light of that moment. All right, Charlie, great stuff. Another great addition that people will be talking about again this week of the Rewatch reaction. We'll have you back next week after the Bengals take on Brian Callahan and the Tennessee Titans. We can break down Callie's scheme.
That's exciting.
I like Callie's scheme breakdown. It is exciting. All right. Talk to you later, buddy.
See ya.